Yeah, hey everyone, welcome to the Fundamental Escape podcast. I'm here today with a very special guest. He's quite dear to my heart. His name is Jeremy, and we're just going to jump into another episode of the Belief series. So, welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Man, always good to talk to you, my friend. Always.
Yeah, let's just jump in here. So we were kind of having a bit of a conversation. We were both in a blab earlier. To do with this phenomenon of street epistemology, or epistemology as it's been called. What are your thoughts? Because I've never really asked you.
Well, the first time I was really introduced to this movement was actually on Blab.
Cult.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, because they actually are. It's a religion, whether they admit it or not. It really is. And so I had been talking to this guy on Periscope. His name was James, very nice atheist.
James.
Yes, and we've been talking, and he said, "Hey man, you need to come on this show that's on Blab." And I was like, "Okay." So he sent me a link, and they had me come on. The host had me come on.
You dive down the rabbit hole.
No, yeah. So hey, I'll go on there. I like talking to different people of different belief systems, and so I'm game. So I hopped on, and they went through the thing. It's like a reverse Ray Comfort approach. And, like you did, the street preaching for years. So it's the same almost approach. I mean,
Yeah.
Instead of saying, do you consider yourself a good person, it was like on a scale of, on a percentage level, like,
So I'm quite keen to hear. I guess you're kind of already opening up the conversation in it, but what was your initial reaction? Were you just like, this? Were you offended? Were you just like, this is weird? Like, what did you think?
Well, I never had quite had that approach before. I've heard that approach before. So I answered their questions honestly. I went through the deal. After that, I thought, this is crazy. So I went to the main guy, the guy that was hosting the Blab. I went to his Twitter page, and he had several videos posted of street epistemology, of him out there doing street epistemology.
Oh, was it Anthony?
Yes.
Making a Bosco.
Yeah, and he's a nice enough guy, So I watched some of the videos, and I'm like, this is evangelism. This is reverse event. This is the opposite. This is the. I mean, it's. The only thing I could run through my head was like, how evangelical of you to do this.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's so bizarre, man. I can't understand. It's getting worse as well. Like, I just can't believe, they do this thing now where they were trying to do it to me where they're just like, they try and get you to pick another name other than your own or something.
Oh, yes. That's a new thing they're doing, I think, now.
So you've experienced that already?
I haven't. Yeah, I saw it experienced. I saw it done to someone else.
So can you explain what you saw? Because I haven't really seen it. They tried to do it to me, and I was like, what the heck are you doing?
Well, I saw them do it on a Catholic guy. And it was, they said, who's your best friend? And he told the name, and they said, okay, you're going to be them. They went through this whole deal of, you're this
so
person. Now put yourself. And
My
they said every time you say, it was crazy. So every time you say he, referring to yourself instead of your name, we're going to hold up a card, because you can't do that. That's getting off track.
They hold up a card?
Yeah, so it's like referee, like foul.
What
you said
he instead of your name. On?
So some kind of
Dude,
crazy.
Can we just get a pause for a second here?
Yeah.
I don't understand this. They literally hold up a card. What's it a card?
I don't remember. Something was written like, it didn't say foul, but it said something like had their name down. Like if you say they're gonna say, we're here with Jeremy. They're talking to me, and they're gonna say, you're Mark from Fundamental Escape. Now you're Mark. Now when you're referring to Jeremy, don't say he, say Jeremy. And if you say he, we're going to stop you and correct you.
I feel like this is like becoming... Because, they think I'm nuts, man. And I've told them. I mean, they know I'm explicit about my mental health issues and everything. I really don't care. I've got nothing to hide,
Right.
I feel like this is a rescue mission, Jeremy. Honestly, like... I'm not trying to convert them to Christianity. I'm just trying to convert them away from this. Like,
right.
Let's start there, right? Like, let's get back to a level footing.
It's a really different approach.
I don't even know if Jesus can save these people, Jeremy.
Are you saying they're reprobate?
No. It's nothing to do with sin. It's like I think Jesus has like an IQ level, like standard. So
Yeah,
Oh man,
it's a
alive!
different approach, man. It's different.
It's insane.
They're actually more evangelical than I am. I mean,
It's
I talk to
cultish.
people.
It's
It
just
is. It
insane.
is. It is.
And
It is.
you can't reason with these people. Like they're just as unreasonable as the fundamentals that they would rail against.
Right. Exactly.
And I
And
think
it's
here's what I want. I do, you know, for those listening and getting pissed off, I do want to dive into some other subjects eventually, but I do want to cover this because I want to get more voices on the table because no one's really speaking out against this, like logically and intelligently. Where do you even start with this? You know, like they're going out, they're speaking to these people without, you know, without putting their cards on the table, without, you know, revealing their own biases. I mean, the guy Peter Boghossian, for goodness sake, said to Sam Harris when asked the question, "Why did you write this book called How to, a Manual for Creating Atheists?" He says, "I wanted to equip atheists with the tools they need to disarm believers." Some nonsense. It's like, you are an evangelist. You just said it.
exactly.
Like, you just said it. And stop bullshitting everyone and pretending that you're open-minded. I don't mind. I'm not offended by your alternative views. Just own them, right? If you're going to hold a belief, at least own up to it.
Exactly. I agree.
Oh, goodness
I
sake.
agree.
I'm getting wound up, Jeremy. I'm getting wound up.
Well, the thing too is, like I mentioned to you earlier, I don't mind. I'll talk with anybody. I'll engage with anyone, you know, respectfully about anything, any questions they may have about why I believe what I believe. I'm open to that. But the thing is with a lot of these guys is they present themselves as, we're looking for truth. Almost
Yeah.
like, can you help me?
Just tell us why you believe. We're just curious
Right.
to know why you believe what you believe.
Right. And
For
they'll
goodness
say, we're on a
sake,
journey
here's
to find
why,
truth.
Jeremy,
and-
okay, I just want to compliment you right now. Here's why I like you, Jeremy. We disagree on the what of belief, but you're at least a nice guy. Like, you have empathy. You have compassion. I think you're extremely misguided in many ways. But you're a nice guy, you know? You at least care about people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, man. I
And
try
my
to.
goodness, and look, I'm wrong about tons of stuff as well. I'm not sitting here going, I've got it all figured out, because I sure as heck don't. And this is the thing. I mean, I guess I want to transition away from this, because I'm sick and tired of giving these people airtime, to be honest. I'm sick and tired of the space they take up in my head. It's insane. It's so weird. So I've been going through a bit of a sort of a change of pace recently in my way of thinking about certain things. So it's a funny story, actually. So, you know, did you see that video that came out on YouTube last year called Dear Fat People?
I did.
Yeah, so what were your thoughts on that when you saw it?
Well, I thought it was a little unfair, and here's why. Many times, I know in my case, it's probably the way a lot of us are fat because it's our fault, and I get that.
Guilty.
Yeah, I get that. But there's some people where it's hereditary. There's some people where it's they can eat light food and still gain weight. Where you got a skinny guy who can eat 12 cheeseburgers in a meal and never gain a pound because of metabolism.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not fair for those people who have slow metabolism or who are hereditary. I think those people need to be in consideration.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I thought it was a little unfair. But
Yeah.
that was my take.
So I was in a completely different headspace when I first watched that video. So I kind of got onto this track of being all about the truth, and let's just tell the truth how it is, and let's just say it like it is. Mm-hmm. And I, as a fat person myself, I was not offended by Nicole Arbour at all. I was not offended. I kind of almost applauded what she did. I thought, good, I think we're starting to live in this sort of mollycoddled world where nobody's allowed to be offended, and I found it quite refreshing in many ways. It's kind of that truth hurts kind of a deal. And so that's been my feeling for a while. And obviously I've talked to people, like the likes of Gavin McInnes, who asked me on my podcast if I was trying to kill myself.
Wow.
We were on video chat, and he, made the observation about me being overweight, and again, wasn't offended at the time, not offended now. It was funny. It made a funny podcast, and so I was quite happy with that. Again, I don't take myself that seriously. Seriously,
Right.
I really don't. I really do not. I once had a kid on a school bus yell, "You're fat," out a window, and I was like, "Thank you for the observation. You're very, very, very astute." I think it's hilarious, and it makes good stories. And I always like to joke about that situation, going, as if I didn't know up until that point that I was fat, and that kid just revealed it to me for the first time. I was
Exactly.
like, "Holy crap! Goodness gracious, you're absolutely right! Like, wow."
You're a
Thank
genius.
That kid's a genius. He's going straight to the top. That was where I was at. And again, I've talked to the likes of, Milo Yiannopoulos. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him at all.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Did you listen to my podcast with him?
I did. I heard. Yeah, I did. He's funny. He's funny.
Oh,
He's a
my
funny
goodness.
guy.
We're not going to dive into him because I talked about him on the last podcast. But, my goodness, unless you have any thoughts. But, this whole idea of just, it's the truth hurts, he sort of said to me, Milo kind of did say to me, you can't be offended at something that's your own life choices, sort of suck it up, was what he said, and I was kind of,
Right.
I was like, well, I kind of invited this whole conversation. But anyway, so I actually reached out to Nicole Arbor on Twitter and said, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast, and she saw my tweet and she actually followed me on Twitter. And so I was able to direct message her a couple of times. And I'm not, I'm definitely not going to go into detail about anything we said because that's not what I'm trying to do here. But it was interesting to say the least. So I kind of got the feeling I'd sent many more messages to her than she'd sent to me. And I was kind of like, she followed me, but she doesn't seem keen. I was like, okay, whatever. So I came across a while ago. Do you know there's a YouTuber called Grace Helbig?
I don't think I've heard.
Okay, she's hugely famous. Like she got a deal on the E channel, and she's got her own talk show, and she does really well, and she does podcasting and stuff like that. I'm at this point now. I'm like, man, I'd love to talk to her. So she's this kind of person, real self-deprecating, really grounded, really intelligent. Really super smart, and she's got a comedic. She's got good timing, and she understands comedy, and she seems to have a lot of substance to her character. And so she made this video response to the Dear Fat People video. And
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've got a video that I did on my channel. I actually called it, what do they call it? Let me pull it up.
I saw your video, Mark.
Oh, yeah, I called it Thankful for Grace. So I kind of used it as a bit of a platform to talk about this issue. But so Grace never makes these kind of videos. She never does these response videos. And everybody else that had made these response videos were basically turning on a camera and saying, essentially, Nicole, you suck, right? That's what they were doing. They're just reacting, right? But Grace's video is incredible. It's called something like Oops, We're All Human or something, And it's incredibly empathetic. It's incredibly thoughtful. And it's one of those videos where she's like, I didn't really want to make this video, but I kind of had to, right? She's not doing it for attention. She's genuinely getting, her heart on the table about the issue. And she goes, I went to bed, I wrote a whole bunch of notes about how I felt about this, thinking that I would get it out of my system, and I woke up after 2 hours sleep, and I have to make this video. And, she's clearly, if you watch the video, she's somebody who's wrestling with this issue. And she says, well, do you think a fat person has never been told they're fat? Like, do you think that they're not aware of it already? And she says, when you tell a fat person just to stop it, right, essentially, which is what the video does, she says, you're kind of almost saying to them, stop feeling feelings, like stop being human, right? She says, she's quite explicit about her own sort of struggle with body image issues and stuff like that, and it's just amazing. It's amazing. And she says, life is hard enough, right? Like when we're trying to just make it through. And she goes, I'm just, like, she basically has this line where she goes, I was mad, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, you know what? She goes, I'm just bummed out, right?
Right.
Like she goes, I just can't believe this is a thing that's happened in the world, you know? And I have to say, I find myself incredibly conflicted in this situation because I still feel torn about the whole thing myself. I mean, as a fat person myself, I sort of had this feeling yesterday where I was like, you know, Mark, you've kind of been on this buzz about being fat, going, yeah, we should just tell all fat people it's just their fault and they should sort out. I was like, but Mark, you're still fat. You know, like at the end of the day, this is still an issue for me, and I don't think this kind of fat shaming, like just tell everyone it's wrong kind of thing, I don't think it's working, right? I don't think the other side is working either, to be fair. You know, I don't think that let's all just hug and hold hands and tell everyone we should just love ourselves and accept ourselves the way we are. I don't think that's working either. So I think there's space to have a conversation, you know, and I think it's interesting. I mean, you know, Grace kind of pointed out in her video that, you know, Nicole turned off the comments on that video, so nobody could comment, you know.
I saw that.
Yeah, so it's kind of going, well, I really just did this for controversy. I really don't care about these people, you know. And so essentially, you know, I'm not going to go into the details of things I said, but I basically sent Nicole a message and I said, look, you know, I'm grateful that you followed me and gave me the opportunity to connect, but I was like, I really don't see value in a podcast because you've kind of said everything you need to say. Like, what else is there? Like, you're clearly not interested in a nuanced discussion, you know?
Right.
So it's like crazy.
Yeah, I think she did what she knew would work in this. It's so politically correct, our culture.
Absolutely.
And so anybody that, I mean, look at Donald Trump. That's why he's killing it, is because
she just did a video on Donald Trump, and she just did another video recently on feminism as well, where she disabled the comments again, you know, because feminism, I mean, is a huge hot topic at the moment, and it's, you know, I'm actually interviewing a feminist in the next couple of weeks, funny enough. But yeah, why do I want to dive into all these subjects, man? I'm crazy. Oh my goodness. So there's something. I mean, it's interesting. Did you listen to the whole conversation I had with Milo, or?
I listened to most of it. I remember the day you sent it to me. I was it was a busy season. I think was it around the holidays? Wasn't it?
So there was something he said in that conversation which I'd love you to reflect on. So. He was talking about all this kind of social justice warrior nonsense that goes on, and you know, these people that are trying to tell everyone they're racist and sexist and homophobic, and you know, if you don't fit this prescribed liberal narrative, which quite honestly, Jeremy, I nearly fell into, and I keep saying this. You know, I'm so grateful, you know, for whatever people think about these people. I'm so grateful for them because. You know, I nearly got roped into this idea that, you know, if you're not against, you know, if you know, to be a loving, kind person, you have to be pro-abortion and gay, you know, pro-gay marriage and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? Who are you to define what love is? Like, I didn't really feel like swearing, but who the heck are you to try to enforce your definitions of love, right? The more I think about it, the more absurd it is, you know? Especially the abortion one. I'm not ashamed to say that. I mean, to try and say that you're hateful for being pro-life, I mean, it's ridiculous. Right.
That's a problem. I mean, I heard somebody say, it's an old quote, love does not equal tolerance. And that's really true. I mean, you don't have to agree with someone to love them. I mean...
Yeah, it's exactly. And I think, again, you know, one of the reasons I do respect you, Jeremy, is that you're a person with convictions, and you kind of at least live up to them, and you know, whether they're right or wrong, that may be another conversation.
I do my best to try to live up to it, man. That's
absolutely. You've got integrity, and that's what I like about you, you know?
I appreciate that, man.
So, oh, man, I just don't know. But this whole thing, I mean, like I say, going back to this video of Grace, I just like talking about it because her name's Grace, you know? It's like, it's kind of... It's a Christian word, I guess. There was a lot of grace to it. There was a lot of compassion and empathy. And it really is making me rethink things of going, Mark, do you, like, I don't, like, you know, some people do think I'm a jerk, and maybe sometimes I am. But I really don't play that role very well in hindsight when I look back. I don't, I'm too self-aware, and I'm too... I am a very empathetic person, and I feel things, and I'm much more emotionally driven than logically driven anyway. And so I don't know. I'm kind of in this place. I'm struggling for words right now, which is really strange for me. I really am.
No,
Jeremy.
I'm totally with you.
I'm actually glad to connect with you, and I know that joking aside, you and I have had many differences, but I really think at the core of it, I think there's a lot of things we can come together on.
Oh, of course, absolutely, man, and that's something too that you talk about. If we take love out of anything, and that's where the church has dropped the ball. The fundamentalist churches, here's where we would agree, has dropped the ball on love. If love is not the core thing, in other words, if we present our truths and what we know is to be true from the Bible and don't have any love, we've missed the point, and it's useless. And Paul made that clear. If we don't love first.
Yeah. Well, this is what I find myself drawn to, these ideas of love and compassion and empathy. I'm just like, I'm not throwing science out the window. I'm not against science and truth and discovering things. It just can't do everything. And that's what pisses me off, is these atheists talk like science is the be-all and end-all. Be all and end-all. Science becomes their god, essentially. It's just absurd.
It does.
And they talk about, the scientific method, it's foolproof because it gets tested and discredited by others. And I'm like, well, have you not considered the simple reality that you all might have a bias that's tripping you up?
Exactly.
It's just ridiculous.
It's exactly the
I made this little meme thing that I posted on Twitter. I don't know if you saw it, about atheism. I was like, atheism is not a synonym for intelligence, and you are just as likely to be tripped up and to believe things because they're convenient, than any other human, essentially.
Exactly.
And it's just insane, man. I don't know what's going on. I'm on this path. I'm on this journey, and quite honestly, as I said, I was quite explicit in that blab earlier, and they said, "What, do you believe in God, or what is God to you, or whatever?" And I was like, you know what? Right now, I have no freaking idea. I'm on a journey, and I don't feel obligated to have all the answers, because I certainly don't. I think I at least want any kind of connection I have to, the divine or to God or whatever word you want to use. I want it to be authentic, and I want it to be genuine. And if I don't know, I want to be able to say, hey, I don't know. Just like in a real human relationship, if you were having an argument or a disagreement, or, you're out of sorts or whatever, you'd have to own up to that.
Right. And that's another thing, atheists are free to say they don't know when it comes to, where did the Big Bang come from? Where did all this start? But when Christians or anybody who believes in God...
It's that quote. I don't know who said it, but there's that quote that says, that sort of sums up the atheist ideology. It says, give us one miracle and we'll take it from here, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Grant us one miracle and we'll explain the rest, I think is how it goes.
Right.
Oh, they're so pretentious.
Yeah, but it's crazy. When we say we don't know, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Here's the thing, and I need to rail against theism for a while to balance the score.
There you go.
I actually did these two videos on YouTube the other day. I did this one video basically posing the question, are atheists thin-skinned? And the answer is yes they are. When you get blocked by Ricky Gervais on Twitter for telling him that Richard Dawkins is funnier than him, I think you find out that they're very thin-skinned.
That's hilarious. That's classic.
It's insane. How pathetic, So, yeah, they are thin-skinned. We kind of put that to bed. But then I did a second video that says, is fear a cover-up for faith? No, sorry, is faith a cover-up for fear?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of posing this question at believers, and it's a genuine question. They're both genuine questions, really. So, I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I think there's, when you've got this whole concept of eternal heaven and eternal hell, I think inevitably you're going to have some fear, right?
Yeah,
and I think,
see what you're saying.
Most Christians, I guess many Christians would say, well, that's a good thing. We should fear. But and here's what I want to dive into, and I'm going to say some pretty loaded things, I think, to spice up the conversation. But when you have this idea that Jesus loves everyone, essentially, which I think is a pretty Christian safe thing to say, unless you're a Calvinist, but Jesus loves everyone. Jesus died for everyone. Forgiveness is offered to all. when you say these things and when you paint a picture that, you know, God is, you know, he takes sin very seriously, but love saves the day, essentially, right? When you say these things and when you put these premises out there, and then you kind of say, oh, but by the way, if you don't buy into this narrative, then when you die, it's going to be a very, very, very bad day, you know?
Right.
You're going to burn forever, which I genuinely don't think I've met anybody in my life who actually believes that, to be quite honest. Because if we did believe it, as it's been said, we would live completely different lives. Actually, I think it was me that said that. I'm just quoting myself.
A wise man once said.
Yeah, no, that was episode 1 of my podcast, actually. Yeah, no, it's true. I think it's true. And I'm saying that as someone that was a street preacher, you know, as people know. So, man alive, Jeremy, I just don't understand how... I get the, you know, here's what I actually heard a message about this whole fear of God sort of deal. People say, you know, God is love, and people say, yeah, but he's also just, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I get that whole conversation. And, you know, in Proverbs it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you sort of fast forward to the New Testament, it says, you know, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Mm-hmm. And so you go, well, how do you, this message was kind of posing the question, like, how do you reconcile these two ideas? Because they seem contradictory. And they said, well, it's simple. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And he goes, this was actually a guy, Shane Hips, who I spoke to on the podcast. It was quite amazing. He says, exactly, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. He goes, it's not the end, right? He goes, it's the beginning. And I was like, oh, right, perfect. You know, and so he goes, you know, he talks about these analogies, like he's like, if you're you know, if you're a child, you know, if you're a parent, you sort of teach your children, like, stay away from the fire, it's hot, you know, and you teach your kids to have this healthy fear of electricity and fire and these dangerous things they don't understand, right? That's where fear can be helpful. But he goes, if you're 30 years old and you're still afraid to touch an element, or you're still afraid of the stove or the fire or whatever, something's kind of wrong. Like, that becomes an issue. You know,
right.
So once you're at that mature level, so I think, and in even in a human relationship, you know, everyone, yeah, because I have so much authority to speak about dating, obviously, but you know, that was a joke. If anyone didn't get that, single and available. Just putting it out there.
There you
go. I'll give out my email at the end. Form an all EQ, ladies. So, you know, I lost my train of thought there. What was
that tripped you up, didn't it?
Yeah, it totally did. Totally did. It's ridiculous. So, but where do we start? So, I can't understand. I mean, yes, there's healthy fear, right? There's a healthy, needed level of fear. But when you're in a relationship, like, let's just say a friendship, you know, fear kind of has to come off the table at some point for there to be intimacy, because you can't get close to something you're terrified of. And I think we've kind of painted this world where, you know, thank God that Jesus comes down, as it's been said by the comedian Pete Holmes, you know, Jesus comes down to save us from drunk dad kind of thing, you know, that there's this kind of monster God who's waiting to beat the crap out of us forever.
Oh, and that's the way he's been presented in the church. And that's another part where me and you would agree, because he's not on the throne waiting to zap us every time we mess up.
But isn't that the kind of, I know we're using imagery and we're being hyperbolic and everything, but isn't that sort of the story you believe?
No, I totally see. I'm not fearful at all. I think a better word would be, or translation would be, respect or
I'm sure,
in
well,
awe
of course,
of.
yeah, but Jeremy, of course you're not fearful because you got the golden ticket. You're at the chocolate factory.
Yeah, well, I'm saying I don't fear because I believe in grace. I believe in what Jesus did on the cross. You know, that I'm not good enough that he.
Yeah, but I'm talking about people outside of the deal. Like, I mean, what about them, right?
Right, and that's why I do everything in my power to reach out to people, not just when I go into churches to talk to youth, but when I'm on the streets, out in the real world, and in my community. I'm constantly engaging people, not annoying them or holding up signs and screaming at them, but, you know, just conversations one-on-one, you know, just talking.
Yeah, but this is the thing, you know, there's a Franciscan priest, Richard Rohr, who basically was talking about this whole subject of hell and everything, and he says, we've set up an idea of God that, you know, it's a sort of God that you wouldn't even buy a used car from. This premise of we sort of are trying to get people to believe in this God that has less empathy and compassion than we do, because we could never even fathom setting up a paradigm of heaven and hell, right? And so he basically calls our system of theology unworkable, because we're trying to promote this God and this idea that we fundamentally really don't believe.
Yeah, but see, I don't consider humanity to have a monopoly on what morality. I mean, what we think is morality and right and wrong.
Okay, so this is the gap then, isn't it? I want to kind of put this in a language that people can understand, because I kind of know what you're talking about, but let's dumb it down a little bit for the listeners. So, not that you listeners are unintelligent, you're beautiful, wonderful people created in God's image, but you're essentially saying, you're kind of invoking this idea of mystery and saying, well, there's just some things we don't understand, and if there's an eternal hell where people are going to burn forever and we can't fathom that, then we can't really question it, or maybe we can, but we can't really change it, and it's just the way it is. Like, is that not what you're saying?
Well, basically, yeah, because I say the Word of God's the final authority for many different reasons. So yeah,
right.
I mean,
so that's okay. So that's the pivotal point is the Bible. So are we allowed? And I'll ask maybe some questions that sound a bit dumb, but are we allowed to, sort of deconstruct a little bit and say, what is the Bible? What is the overarching message of it? What did Jesus kind of believe the Bible to be? Maybe is a good question. How did Paul view the afterlife? Did he speak about heaven? Did he speak about hell? Where do we even begin? Because I like to ask the question, what is the Bible? What is it? What is it even meant to be?
Right.
Is it a rule book? Is it just telling us how to live?
I would say it's a roadmap, man. It's instructions how to live our lives and how to get to heaven.
Sorry, I'm sorry for laughing straight away. Because we had Barry Taylor on the show. He was a road manager for AC/DC. And he goes, This is direct quote, I think. He says, if the Bible is a guidebook, he goes, we're all screwed. He goes, it's like a map without roads. What he was essentially saying, if I can sort of flesh it out a bit, he was basically saying, well, the Bible doesn't really cover every potential issue you're going to face in your life. Like, the Bible doesn't deal with things like, video piracy, as Ricky Gervais kind of makes a joke about. The Bible doesn't, and I disagree with you profoundly, because I don't think the Bible is a guidebook. I don't think it's intended to tell us just how to live. I think the gospel, the good news, is about waking up to the fullness of what it means to be fully human and to make the right choices, not because a book tells you, but because you're alive, that you move, as the Bible says, from a heart of stone to a heart of flesh, sort of a deal, where you wake up and you go, I choose to love not because of any rules, regulations, or laws, but because I actually believe love is a good thing.
Right. And I don't consider the Bible to be a rule book. When I say a roadmap, I'm talking about finding salvation through Jesus Christ. We can't keep all the rules.
Okay, we're kind of getting into this, this transactional conversation about we broke the law and Jesus paid our fine, right? That's how we could sum it up. Right. You broke the thing. Have you ever lied, Jeremy? Let's role play.
Exactly.
What does that make you, Jeremy?
What
does that make
show us
you?
We can't keep it.
Yeah, but I think beyond that, I mean, Paul in the epistles in Romans, I think it is, he kind of takes it a step further, where he says everything is he says everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. So he's basically saying you can do whatever the heck you like, but it's not going to help you, every time. So it's getting beyond this. That love supersedes the law and says, you know what? The rules work well when you're a child and when you need to be sort of guided, but you've got to grow up at some point. And isn't the biggest? I know one of the biggest attacks from atheism against religion, which I do kind of buy into, is this idea that you're not really taking responsibility for your lives. You're not really taking responsibility for your actions. Jesus did it all for you. You can sleep well at night knowing that you're going to go to a better place when you die, and that's great for you, but screw everyone else,
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, it's not that I can just do whatever I want now because Jesus paid it all. It's that he changes your desires. So the drill. I mean, you know the belief system.
Yeah.
He makes you want to do good.
Yeah. Well, you see, again, he makes you want to do good. I mean, aren't we inherently, fundamentally made in the image of God? Doesn't goodness flow through our veins because we're made as, image bearers of the divine?
Yeah, I would say that we definitely have a desire to reach out to our Creator. Absolutely, that's in everybody. Because we're made in His image. But you already know what I'm going to say. How sin corrupted all that, and the curse came.
Yeah, but then I'm going to throw the Bible at you. Funny enough. So what abounds more, sin or grace?
When we accept Christ as the covering, grace.
But what does it say? Where sin abounded, grace abounded a little bit.
That's for the people who have accepted Christ. Yeah, absolutely.
Grace abounded just enough to cover every sin you'd commit. What does it say, Jeremy? Grace abounds much more. Correct?
Right. Absolutely.
So this is this idea, like, and again, you could go into, we could go into the Hebrew and we could break down the nuance of this whole kind of argument. But maybe it'll bore the listeners. You've got this kind of Hebrew wordplay, this kind of I think it's called Kalva Komer. It's this light and heavy, like light statements and heavy statements. So it's a linguistic tool. So what they would do is they would pair up these two ideas next to each other. One of them was deemed as a light statement, and the other was deemed as a heavy statement, right? Mm-hmm. So it was sort of a magnifier. So what it does is essentially, by calling the first statement light, it makes the second statement look incredibly deep. So it says things like, just as sin, corrupted the world through one man, so through one man all will be made right, to that sort of effect, and of course you'd say only the saved. But it's kind of going, sin entering the world through one man is the light statement, and it's a total wordplay when you go into the language of it and everything. So it's, I don't know, and I'm not trying to make a case for universalism. I'm not, because I have issues with that as well. I really do, because this is where I think I find myself in this tension, and I find myself pissing off atheists and theists, because I struggle with this idea of universalism as much as anything else, because if you're going to say to me, well, all's well in the end and everything's okay, then what the hell is going on here? Why is there rape? Why is there murder? Why are there child molesters? What the heck is going on? Right? Is God some kind of a cosmic sadist that, it's kind of either corruption on this side or corruption on that side, right? It's either pain and suffering here that just is really pointless because we're all saved in the end, or it's kind of this horror story afterwards where only a select few get to go in and everyone else kind of burns.
Right. But if you're talking about all the bad stuff, the pain, the suffering, again, here's where me and you would agree that that's not of God. God's not happy with that or take joy in that.
No, but what I'm saying is I'm arguing that from a universalist point of view, right? I'm saying if everything's okay in the end, then how the heck do you explain all this chaos?
Right.
Because it's not necessary. What the heck is the middle step for?
Right.
Why don't we just skip to the end?
Exactly, yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So I think, Jeremy, is I think there's something more going on here, and I think that I'm freely admitting I have no freaking idea what it is. I still find myself compelled by Jesus, and I still find myself compelled by the gospel message. And sometimes I don't know why, but I just do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I mean, Jesus... even for people who deny he's the Son of God, they can't deny that he was an amazing man who said amazing things.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course for Christians, I believe he was the Son of God, so that's why he did amazing things and said amazing things. But yeah, he was definitely a history maker, no doubt, and I think everybody can agree on that for sure.
Yeah. So I know that. You seem to have this very kind of resolution mindset where you don't, you're clearly not as troubled as I am. Let's put it that way. I think you sleep better at night than I do, because I'm bothered by a lot of these things. I really am. And I'm
troubled about certain things. I think maybe different
but you
things
come
possibly.
Across, yeah, for sure. I'll concede that. But you come across like someone who like you sort of say, when there's something you don't really agree with or understand, you go, well, that's God and I'm not God and we're just little humans. And I'm just kind of going, I can't go down that path with you. I really can't, because it's a dead end road. It's a cul-de-sac.
Right. Now, to me personally, everything in the Bible, to me so far that I've read, makes sense. If you talk about judgment, the sacrifice, all the fundamentals of Christianity make sense to me in the overall picture. Now, as far as why God does everything He does, if I understood that, that would make me God. So I have no idea. But I get what He's doing. I get what He's doing. I get what the point is of Jesus coming to die. You know, that all makes sense to me.
So talk about that, because I think some people will be curious to know what you mean. What was the point?
You mean just the Bible, or Jesus coming, or just
the gospel? Give it to us.
Well, here, and if I can, do I have a certain time or anything, or can I just?
Oh, go nuts.
You can just stop me. You can stop me if
well,
I go too long.
We could be street epistemologists and set a timer for 5 minutes.
There you go. There you go. No, my deal is, and here's what I tell people when I do blabs or whatever, and you may have heard me, I'm not sure, to go through this, but what I really feel, why I think the Bible is legit in the Gospels and all, the overall story. To me, the Bible is the basis of reality, is what I tell people. When they say, what do you mean? I always say, well, you take any other religion you want to take, the Bible is the only book, or if you want to, I don't like calling it a religion, because I'm again, you'd probably agree with me with saying Jesus didn't come to set up a new religion. He came to be a friend and to love people. So he really didn't come to set up a new religion, but Christianity's been clumped in with all the other religions, and that's fine. So for the sake of argument, I'll call it religion. But any other religion that you take doesn't give the solid answers the Bible does. And when I say basis of reality, the big questions we have of why are we here, what happens when we die, all these questions. When you take Islam, for example, you start off with judgment being rendered when you look at the Quran. And Buddhism, the first principle of that is suffering is. So again, we're talking about a broken creation. We look around, like you talked about a while ago, all the pain, suffering. We see a broken world, a broken creation. But to have something broken, you have to have something breakable to begin with. And the Bible tells us what is breakable, where the fall of man. So that's why Jesus came to restore the creation back to the Creator. So that's when I say basis of reality. I'm saying that's what He came to do. The Bible gives us a clear picture of why the world's the way it is, but how it can be perfect again.
Yeah.
So it gives a message of hope.
An atheist would say, I'll just play devil's advocate. Some people might think this is the devil, but anyway. So, an atheist would sort of say, well, if God's all-knowing, right, then He would know the whole setup, and He'd know the sin was going to happen. He'd know the deal, and it just seems like this silly kind of game that's being played here for no real purpose.
Yeah, and I always tell them, because I hear that one a lot. And when I tell them, they say that, God knew Adam and he would sin, then therefore He knew suffering would be. Why didn't He just prevent it all? And my mind always goes back to the C.S. Lewis quote in The Case for Christianity, when he said God made things that had free will, knowing they could go right or wrong, but it would also it gives. Let me see how he said it. In other words, you can't have real love or real
without freedom to choose.
Without freedom, yeah. So in other words, I held a gun to my wife's head and said, "Love me or else." That wouldn't be real love.
Well, it's sort of like, I suppose, if you have children, like you could be planning your family and thinking, "Oh, let's have kids," and going, "Oh no, one of them might die of a horrible disease, or one of them might get hit by a car, so let's just never have kids." Right. I know that's a silly sort of analogy, but it sort of makes sense to me.
He knew what would happen. I believe God has, and that's the big thing getting with Calvinists all the time. There's a difference in foreknowledge and foreordaining. So that's a whole nother podcast for another day. But God knew what was going to happen. Right. God knew what was going to happen. But he was like C.S. Lewis said, it was a risk he was willing to take. So,
do you ever, as we've talked about, and this might open up a wormhole, I might get sucked into Narnia. But do you ever have significant doubts about these things you're so sure of?
I have, and I can honestly say, and I tell people this a lot too.
What is that? Because we have talked about that. You sort of say that it's in your past, and you have, and
right.
So what do you, when you say that you have doubted, what does that feel like? Or can you describe that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, well, so I'm rebellious by nature. I just have a tendency to be a rebel, and that's something that can be used for good or bad, I suppose. But yeah, I've always been the type of I'm stubborn. I don't like believing something just because I've been force fed it my whole life, kind of deal. If I'm stuck in a place, a location, or in a home where a certain religion is being pushed, I don't want to be dumb enough just to go along with it just because. This is my mindset from when I was 13, 14, all the way up till even now. So several years back, yeah, I mean, I went through searching out other religions, not from a Christian perspective, but from their perspective,
Yeah.
reading their literature, listening to Dawkins and Hawking and these guys,
Oh, you're,
and
you're a trooper.
yeah, just like, hey, I don't care. I'm going to be fearless. I want to know truth. If I've just been punked my whole life and I'm believing something just because it's been passed down from generation to generation, then I'm not going to do this. So yeah, so I went on this journey of wanting to know truth. And of course, when you take the God, especially the fundamental God Christianity idea out, you can have more fun. What we call fun. Of course, we know that the
Fun.
Bible
What do you
says
mean by
that.
fun?
Fun, go out, do what you want to do. Just.
Do you think?
Go
Well,
and,
let's hit. I want to hit on this point because
Mhm.
this is a serious point. I want to talk to you about this. Let's have a conversation right now. Do you really think people are having fun without these things? Do you really think that these people who are doing things? I guess you're suggesting things like drunkenness and free sex.
Well, anything,
and
women,
partying.
yeah.
So do you really think that that these people are having fun?
I think yeah. I think it's a temporary fun. It's a shallow fun. It's a joy that's not going to
So
last.
do you ever feel like you're missing out?
No, so I'm saying I went through. I never did the whole drunken thing. Never did a lot of that stuff. But I did do things that was against what I was raised to know is right. And when you take God out of the equation,
Yeah.
and which is why I think why a lot of people do it, because there's no God, no judgment, no rules. I can do what I want to do, but all that stuff.
See, you're really speaking. Sorry to interrupt you, but you're really speaking to your view of humanity right now.
Really.
Well, you are by definition, really. I mean, you're essentially saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm never wrong, but sorry to the atheists, by the way. That was a joke. I know you thought I was being literal, but that was a joke. I didn't mean the last thing I just said. My goodness, get a sense of humour. So you're sort of painting a picture of humanity that's quite lowly, if I could say it like that, diplomatically.
I'm speaking for myself, but I know I'm not the only one that when I say that, sex is fun. It's and of course, sex the way God designed it is great. There's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, I mean, if from a world view of saying, I want to go out and get, hit up the club, get drunk, sleep with all the women I want to.
Yeah,
that's all of us. Who doesn't want to do that?
Take away the woman side of things. I mean, I've been through the drunkenness, and it's not really fun. I mean, it's it's really not. It's really,
especially the next day.
Well, no, I mean, even at the time, it's not. It's just not. It's actually quite it's quite horrible, and it turns you sort of towards this idea of it's escaping, right? And I'm only speaking for myself. I mean, and this is half the thing. I think half the reason I turned to alcohol was not was sort of a rebellion against fundamentalism.
Right.
It was legalism that made me kind of, because it makes these things so taboo, right?
Right.
You kind of go, wow, maybe I want to see what this is all about.
Like a little kid, don't touch the stove.
Yeah, it's like you've made such a big deal of it, and I just want to see what all the fuss is about. So you kind of created this monster. Therefore, it's not my fault.
And I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
No, look, and I think these ideas of the Bible as a guidebook and all this kind of stuff, I think it creates more disconnection with real life and more chaos than it's worth. And I think there's something more going on. I think when Jesus said, "Behold, I make all things new," I don't think he was joking. Mm-hmm. I think these sort of subversive stories of like the prodigal son returning home, you know, and it's funny because in a Jewish world they don't actually call that story the story of the prodigal son, they actually call it the story of the loving father.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So the whole premise of that story is really around the love of the father.
Right.
So, because you've got two rebellious sons, right? I mean, in a sense, not rebellious necessarily. You've got one that kind of disengages from the family unit, and then you've got one that stays almost out of obligation. When, you know, it's quite telling at the end of the story when he says, when me and my friends wanted to party or whatever, you didn't even give us a goat to sacrifice or whatever. Like, you know, a goat was, in a Jewish world, a goat doesn't, you know, it's scarcity, right? It doesn't have much meat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's stingy,
right.
you know? You're so stingy you couldn't even give us a measly goat sort of deal. And yet this son who was, you know, rebelled against the family has come home and, you know... and there's a sort of declaration from the father in that story where he says to the other brother, he says, you know, you have always been with me and everything I have is yours, right? And it's this story of generosity and love and compassion and empathy. It's not, we've sort of westernized it to this, oh, there's one of these boys that was rebellious and he left home and he did bad stuff. And then he came back and he said sorry and the father accepted him. Well, whoop-de-doo, you know? Like, that's really not the story. The story is the relentless love of a father who endlessly pursues, who endlessly chases us and endlessly, offers redemption.
Right. A love that never ceases. And that's,
so we kind of make it all about us, you know? Like, I was a sinner and now I'm saved. Wow, well done. Like, you know... it's kind of, you know, I mean, there are some clear scriptures in the Bible, and as I said earlier, I'm not making a dogmatic argument for universalism, but there are scriptures that say things like, you know, talks about the cross and says, you know, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto myself, you know. Mm-hmm. Behold, I make all things new. And, you know, the Calvinists kind of doctor that and say, well, you know, he's only talking about the elect. It's like, well, okay, sure. You know. So I think in closing, and like, feel free to jump in and sort of say anything you like, I suppose. But mm-hmm. I guess in closing, I have no idea. I can't even land this conversation in a logical place.
Well, I will throw this in, Mark, if you don't care.
Go nuts.
What you were saying a minute ago about you started drinking.
Oh dear, bring on my sin.
No, hey, I've got my own. I'm just saying the point you made of you did it sort of out of spite. I think that's the case for a lot of us, myself included.
And I was hurting. I found it to be an escape. You know,
right.
I was hurting.
Oh yeah, exactly. But I think the church has been guilty of emphasizing sin so much instead of. I'm not saying sin doesn't exist. Of course, it exists. I think we all would agree. You know, we may not agree on what certain sins are, but we'd all agree there's some kind of of bad in the world. That people do if they hurt other people, things like that. But the point I always tell people is, you come to Christ. It doesn't matter what you're doing or what you've done. It's more about His love for you than He's not. In other words, He's not intimidated by it. I mean, He's not. And we do these lists of do's and don'ts. We make the Bible all about these rules, and it's more about if you come to Christ, then He transforms you. And it's not about following a list of certain rules. It's about following Jesus. And when you follow Jesus, the rest takes care of itself, basically. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I may have said to you before, it's this idea that, sort of hijacking this quote, but it's this idea that we kind of grossly, overestimate our ability to be righteous, and we grossly underestimate the cross.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of walk around on eggshells, like there's only just enough grace to forgive us. If we're lucky, we might. There was actually a song. Actually, this is a good place to land. I'll get all sentimental. So there was a song that I had at my baptism when I was about 8 years old, I think, and it said, and I would rather be. There was a line that says, "I would rather be a doorkeeper in your house than to live my life somewhere else." You know, and it's this kind of like, it's this beautiful tune. It's like, you know, amazing and everything. But it's this idea that if I just get in by the skin of my teeth, then I'll be okay, you know?
Right.
And I think that there's more going on than that. So,
Well, that's actually from a scripture in Proverbs, I believe.
yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Well, thanks for your time today, Jeremy. I think
Yeah,
we'll
man.
just wind down here.
Absolutely.
Maybe this will be a part 1. Maybe we'll get you back on.
I'd love to, man. Anytime.
Sweet, man.
Anytime.
Cool. I'll just